Farmweek is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, we have two feature stories for you. It's hot here, but it's worse in other places. See how some cattle ranchers in Colorado are entering their third year of drought.
In southern gardening, the Cleome is tall and a bloomer, and it loves the South's climate. It's also offered in a new variety with improved characteristics.
Our first feature story today is about the outstanding tree farmer of the year in Mississippi. John Arachea's North Mississippi Tree Farm is an excellent example of the multiple use concept. He's also used it for 25 years to educate area children about tree farming.
This was a highlight of my year when the children, even pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, came out in the July and August, September, hot out here, but I knew that the children were going to be coming, and they'd bring their school buses in, and sometimes with as many as 60 children in one group. So, but I enjoyed that.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week, a feature story edition.
In this week's very first story, we meet a gentleman whose passion for trees is unmistakable. In fact, many children in the Oxford, Mississippi area got their first introduction to what tree farming is all about thanks to the school tours that John Arachea hosted on his property for 25 years. Last October, Arachea was named the Outstanding Tree Farmer of the Year by the Mississippi Forestry Association. John continues to be a strong advocate for forestry and always has time to show a visitor to his tree farm what it means to be a good steward of the land. This sign marks the turnoff for Springwood Christmas Tree Farm, John Arachea's tree farm south of Oxford, Mississippi. What are now open areas on this beautiful place used to be covered in Christmas trees. Lots of Christmas trees, 7 acres worth in fact. Christmas trees were the first main enterprise of this farm. From 1985 to 2010, John Arachea had school groups out here each year. He taught them about what it takes to produce Christmas trees and about how to take care of the land.
This was a highlight of my year when the children, even pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, came out in the July and August, September, hot out here, but I knew that the children were going to be coming, and they'd bring their school buses in, and sometimes with as many as 60 children in one group. So, but I enjoyed that.
Each November and December for 25 years, John Arachea used his tree farm as a demonstration area to educate young people about forestry. During this time, he figures he sold well over 4,000 Christmas trees. Also during these years, John's wife Lois operated a related business each holiday season. She made wreaths and garland from all the cull trees in a workshop in this house on the farm. Although the tours for children ended in 2010 and Christmas tree sales are now limited to stock he buys wholesale and brings in, John is still always more than happy to take a walk on his property with visitors or friends and talk about his tree farm.
The thing that kind of impresses me is with 120 acres, he's got a wide variety of habitat. I mean, he's got some bottomland hardwood, he's got some upland old growth, you know, an area where he's done the Christmas tree farm that he's gradually converting over to pine, and then the pine plantation areas. It's just amazing the variety of habitat he has here.
This ridge on the farm was converted from Christmas trees to loblolly pine production in 2007. John Arachea personally planted 1,000 seedlings as a reforestation project.
This area here at one time for a number of years was in different Christmas trees, probably improved variety of Virginia pine. And so as time went on, my wife tells me I need to slow up a little bit. So this was just open field for a while after the last Christmas trees were harvested. Anyway, and so I went ahead and planted this area in loblolly. So this is a stand. I'm real proud of it.
Adjacent to the young trees is a stand of 21-year-old loblolly. Forestry consultant Bill Canale worked with John Arachea on a harvest operation on this part of the tree farm in 2008. A first thinning was conducted on 66 acres of loblolly.
I actually found a quality thinning crew from Bruce, Mississippi. We negotiated with them and conducted basically a fifth row system, fairly light thinning, but it's a beautiful stand of high quality genetics, pole quality material, and John said it was planted with International Paper Company stock, and certainly left enough volume to come back and do a second cut within the next few years.
There has also been other forest management work in addition to harvesting and reforestation on this tree farm in the last 5 years. Other practices have included the rehabilitation of existing fire lanes in 2008, as well as the installation of new ones.
So we come in and, of course, put water bars and turnout ditches on the existing fire lanes, put in new ones, and we covered it with some arrowleaf clover, some common Bermuda, and it's held really well. You know, we don't see much erosion, and he's also got some native grasses coming back on it as well. He's got some common Lespedeza for wildlife. So he was looking at 3 things really with the fire lanes: 1, fire control, some wildlife habitat, and then some good areas that he can get around the property and keep an eye on it.
John Arachea's most recent forest management work on the tree farm was performing a QVM spray in 2011. Working through his consultant and his service forester with the Mississippi Forestry Commission, John obtained cost-share funding for an aerial application to control both woody and herbaceous species of vegetation in the pine plantation. A controlled burn is scheduled to take place in the winter of 2013.
John Arachea is just a prime example of what we like to see in a forest landowner. He manages his tree farm on a sustainable basis. He has a diversity of crops in his business. He's got the traditional forestry going on. He does thinning and regeneration, but he also does his little Christmas tree farm sales.
Unlike some tree farmers, forestry is more than just a hobby for John Arachea. He is college trained in this field and was a forester with the U.S. Forest Service until his retirement in 1987. John has had a written forest management plan for his property since the day he bought it 42 years ago.
A landowner's objectives can vary, and depending on what they want to do, they can either manage for economic gain, or they can have multi-purpose management. John manages multi-purpose. He is a big advocate for wildlife. He also has the Christmas tree farm here. So he has income producing opportunity as well as beneficial enjoyment.
But probably the most impressive thing that really stood out to me was what Mr. John and Miss Lois do for the community in promoting forestry and the tree farm program. He's held a position on the Oxford Tree Board, served as the chair on that board, and he's helped found a nature trail which was actually named after him here in the community.
Perhaps most importantly, John Arachea is responsible for helping organize the Lafayette County Forestry Association 20 years ago. John is now the editor of the Lafayette CFA newsletter and serves on the board as treasurer. He has been a member of the Mississippi Forestry Association since 1965 and the Society of American Foresters since 1967. From Oxford, Mississippi, I'm Leighton Spann reporting. And you can watch this story on John Arachea again at the Farmweek website, Facebook page, or YouTube. Now the website is farmweek.msucares.com. We'll also have all the links and contact information for the many agencies that you can go to get forestry advice and to help you start to manage a tree farm. And artists, I talked to Lois and John Arachea, and they're going to be headed to Minneapolis, Minnesota at the end of the month for the National Tree Farm meeting. Looking forward to that. Now you saw the open areas on the place, a lot of areas to bush hog, and he was glad in late June he had a couple of his oldest grandsons down from Germantown, Tennessee that helped him take care of the bush hogging duties there on the tree farm in the open areas. And earlier back in the spring, the Forestry Commission was on hand to help him do a controlled burn on about 66 acres of that tree farm. So a lot going on at the Arachea place.
One thing to remember, he didn't do this all in a day. And if you want to, there's free advice out there. Mississippi Forestry Commission, the MSU Extension Service, the NRCS. There is advice out there. The main thing is get a plan and then follow that plan. It's time now for today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. This week it's about the number of Americans living and working on farms. We're not talking just living in the country, but actually working. Is the answer 0.75%, 2%, 5%, or 6%? We'll have the answer after today's Southern Gardening segment.
Are you looking for a tall flowering annual, one that likes the summer heat? In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman will show us how new varieties of Cleome can provide season-long color.
One of the flowering plants I remember from my youth is Cleome. I love the tall plants with the flowers that looked a little spidery. I still love the flowers, and these plants are perfect for our summer landscapes. Several years ago, a new and exciting Cleome was introduced. Senorita Rosalita Cleome is a great garden and landscape plant, and it doesn't have thorns like the older varieties. This plant has been a strong summer performer all across the Southeast. Flowers are produced freely all summer long. In 2009, Senorita Rosalita was selected as a Mississippi Medallion winner and has not looked back. Senorita Rosalita does not produce viable seeds, so reseeding is not a problem. The growth habit is compact, with typical growth being 24 inches tall and 20 inches wide. In some locations, the plants may get a little larger. Another Cleome that is garden-worthy are the sparklers, available in white, pink, and lavender. Sparkler Blush Cleome was selected as an All-America Selections in 2002. These plants also have a bushy growth habit and will grow to about 36 inches tall. Sparkler has the potential to reseed, but the subsequent generations will likely resemble one of the breeding parents. Once the Cleome start to grow out, the plentiful flower heads may cause the branches to arch. Resist the urge to stake the taller varieties. The gentlest breeze can cause the arching branches to sway, adding movement to the landscape. Senorita Rosalita and Sparkler Cleome add interesting textures to the garden for you and your neighbors to enjoy. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
And Gary says Cleomes like lots of sun and well-drained soil.
Well, it's time for the answer to today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. It's about how many Americans live and work on farms in the United States, and the answer might surprise you. The answer is almost 2%, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That figure came from the 2007 Census of Agriculture. We're going to pause now for a break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll have the calendar and one more feature story for you. The nation's cattle herd is at its lowest point since the early 1950s. One of the reasons is the third year of drought being faced by Colorado ranchers.
Mississippi 4-H celebrates a rich history of youth development through creative hands-on experiences. Programs emphasize leadership, technology, science, and agriculture.
But it's a lot more than that. Making the best better.
Before we get back to our last story, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Mississippi State University is hosting its annual Warm Season Grass Forage Tour on Saturday, July 13th. The free tour will take place on the South Farm at MSU. The tour will run from 8 to 11 a.m. Warm Season legumes Nitrogen fertility, Bermuda grass, and Bahia grass will be featured. Lunch will be served, so please pre-register. MSU will hold its annual Corn and Soybean Day on Thursday, July 18th at Stoneville. Runs from 10 a.m. into the late afternoon. Commercial exhibitors will be on hand until 2:30 p.m. Research plot tours will start at 2:40 p.m. At 10, though, the On Target Application Academy will introduce some of the latest in sprayer and spray application technology. It will also give instruction in proper techniques to keep herbicides on target and effective. Irrigation technology and tactics will also be highlighted. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
The U.S. cattle herd currently stands at 96 million head, making it the smallest since 1952. Multiple years of drought have forced many cattle producers in the West to cull their herds. Our last feature story today takes us to Colorado, which has the 7th largest cattle herd in America. Annual cash receipts total more than $3 billion. Unfortunately, a third-year drought is forcing the state's cattlemen to make hard decisions regarding their place in the industry. Market to Market's David Miller visited there this spring.
Tim Canterbury runs a cow-calf operation in the high country near Howard, Colorado. Canterbury, along with his son Ryan, run about 300 cows and their calves on the family ranch situated along the Sangre de Cristo mountain range. Normally, the cattle would be eating meadow grasses, but the drought gripping Colorado for the past 2 years has reduced new growth. As the arid conditions drag into a third year, Canterbury is digging into his reserve of hay that his son and brother Bill harvested last season. In a good year, the trio would roll up 1,500 bales, but the extreme lack of moisture cut that number to just 300.
Everybody else was in the same boat and trying to figure out how to survive. So we've had to make some really drastic management choices. Not that we wanted to, but because of necessity, we just had to. So I guess the trigger point was last fall. We didn't have the hay, had to purchase hay. We had about 20%, 25% of normal hay production here in 12.
While the fifth-generation rancher and his son each managed separate herds, they were faced with the same problem of high feed costs and lack of moisture. The issue forced the Canterburys to sell off nearly half of their stock, culling at least 280 head between both ranchers. While an easy fix might be waiting for things to pencil out and buy back animals, there is a catch. The cattle the Canterburys need for replacements must be bred for high altitude. Animals without the right genetic makeup run the risk of suffering from bovine high mountain disease, more commonly known as brisket disease. At heights of over 3,000 feet, fluid can form around a cow's heart, potentially killing the animal. That concern is foremost in their minds when they select replacement cattle, because a good share of the 35,000 acres of pasture the Canterburys either rent or own is at 7,500 feet above sea level.
We can't just go down to the market and buy cows and replace cows. It's a little tougher out here, and you have to have that, be able to find those high altitude cattle, or else save your heifers and come back. When you've sold 45, 50% of your cow herd, it's going to hurt, and it's definitely going to take us a little time to get back.
Last year, Canterbury realized he might be forced to sell off some cattle. Insufficient meadow grass, a smaller than normal hay crop, and reduced grazing days on Bureau of Land Management meadows made it clear changes would have to be made. The issue has forced family members to think about taking off-ranch jobs for the first time in many years.
Due to the drought, I have to get a second job, and in some cases a third. I work in the construction business now. A lot of building, a lot of excavation work, things of that nature. Because they just don't have the amount of cows. I've had to sell a lot of cows in this drought.
Last fall, the Canterburys sold some of their cattle. They received $70 per hundredweight for the best animals, but many sold for $60 per hundred, a price lower than what the senior Canterbury felt the animals were worth. Either way, the decision was clear-cut.
You know, I guess that we got to start looking at the balance sheet. Obviously, you know, my son's had to take an outside job. And I'll tell you what, I'm right on the brink of it. You know, you get under 100 head of mother cows and it's really tough to pay the bills. The bills for this ranch that normally has 300 mother cows on it are the same. It doesn't matter whether there's 300 mother cows or 100 mother cows, those bills are the same.
The slump in the cattle market has impacted ranchers in all phases of beef production, including those who breed top genetics into replacement cattle. Mitch Rohr is the chief operating officer for the Spruce Mountain Ranch in Larkspur, Colorado.
We're not experiencing a drop in price. In fact, in 2012, our average price per animal sold was higher than we've ever had. However, we didn't sell as many. So people are very limited. Producers, cow-calf, ranchers, farmers, they're limited on their production because of the costs, the high hay costs, the high grain costs, and no pasture. And it's hard to look a year down the road or 2 years down the road and say, we need to survive this. We need to really work through how we do this so we can capitalize on the market down the road.
Spruce Mountain's primary business is selling registered Black Angus replacement cattle to cow-calf operations. Along with choosing blue ribbon traits, Rohr keeps a close eye on the habits of beef consumers.
What I'm seeing being around the metro areas, we're seeing a lot of families still go out to eat, still order steak, beef, hamburgers, what have you. We're just not seeing them quite as often. Maybe they used to go out 2 or 3 times a week, now they're going out once a week. They will spend a little more that one time based upon our surveys and the data that we've been able to compile. However, when you go back to the beginning of the beef chain, what I'd consider the seed stock producer, that affects us indirectly. So we have to kind of watch those forecasted markets and say, okay, how do we improve what we do, less input costs, but still achieve that output and create that revenue for our operation.
Spruce Mountain started its Angus operations 6 years ago. Much of the herd is raised at the East Ranch near Kiowa, Colorado, about 45 minutes from the home office. For several years, forage needs for the 1,000 head of cattle were handled within an hour of the 16,000-acre operation. Now Rohr is forced to travel more than 10 times that distance to find hay.
The past couple of years, we've seen the prices go up, not so much that you can't find the hay, and not so much that the price of the hay is so high that you can't afford it. It's the fuel cost. It's the trucking. We have to reach farther out. Instead of going 50 or 60 miles to help bring in some supplemental hay resources, we have to go out 500-600 miles.
Rohr is concerned about the future and is working hard to avoid reducing numbers in a herd that he has invested time, hard work, and tons of feed.
Nobody likes a quitter. So I'd say right now, we're not even looking down that road. We got to stay positive. There's a lot of people that look from the outside in, whether it be from a metro area, whether it be from a rural area. They look in and they want leaders, and we're trying to step up to that point and also help equip others with our genetics to be in the forefront of that.
Rohr and Canterbury remain optimistic, and both men are conscious of the legacy they will leave behind.
You know, this ranch has always been my life. Born and raised here, it's what I love to do. It was opportunity, you know, for me, and I want to pass that opportunity to my sons. I have 2 sons. You've met my young son, and I'm not saying that they have to stay on this ranch, but I'm saying I want to give them the opportunity to make their own decision whether this is what they want to do or not.
You can watch this story again on the Rocky Mountain Drought at our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch Farm Week stories on YouTube and Facebook. And we will have a link to the Market to Market website so you can see the story there as well as read the script.
And Leighton, this story was shot a little bit north of the Black Forest, Colorado area, excuse me, where all the fires have been, which is near Colorado Springs. So, you know, still a dry winter, now a dry spring, and a lot of fires there and down in New Mexico. I don't know if you noticed the gentleman that was up in the mountains, the turkeys, those were Miriam turkeys for those of you who are into Grand Slams. He had a lot of them there. Also, did you catch that he was ranching his cattle at 7,300-foot elevation? I mean, that's just kind of, for us here in the flatlands, it's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, it's a one-of-a-kind opportunity in the world, and it takes place at Mississippi State University.
The Insect Rearing Workshop attracts participants from around the globe. To study insects, you have to have a supply on hand, and growing them is not as easy as you think.
You'll also travel to Faulkner, Mississippi to catch up on this year's winter wheat harvest in Mississippi.
Extreme cowboy racing comes to Pontotoc. This national competition tests rider and horse with obstacles found in everyday ranch life.
In Southern Gardening, find out some ways to attract butterflies to your landscape. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.